Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you out there in the world today. I hope you're having a great day. My day has gotten brighter already because I've got such a beautiful, beautiful goddess here with me today that I felt an instant connection, like lightning going through my body when I met this beautiful, beautiful woman. She is a jazz singer, incredible voice. And in fact, when she started singing, my feminine empowerment just lit up like a phoenix rising up out of the flame. And I thought, okay, who is this? I need to know this person. So
Mhm.
Arlee, it's so great to have you here with me today. This is Arlee Leonard.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Schamet. It's so great to be here. I felt that energy with you and I felt that passion that you have. And you caught my eye, in the event that we were in right away too. I was like, ooh, she's got some power. She's got some juice. So thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here today. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. I know. It takes one to know one, right? We recognize each other. Birds of a feather, they fly together. So, yep, absolutely. So, Arlie is very passionate about empowering women and to live their best life, to live a life of passion, creativity, love, and she genuinely, gets lit up by making the world a better place. So we are very aligned in what we are here on this planet to do, which is empower women. And I've asked her to be on my show today because she's got a wonderful and interesting wounds to wisdom, wisdom to superpower story. So, first of all, though, Arlie, can you tell us a little bit more about who you are, what lights you up, what you're passionate about, and what you're doing on the planet to make it a better place?
Ooh, who am I? What am I passionate about? What am I doing? Well, I am the daughter of musicians, and I'm actually now their caregiver for the last 3.5 years. Um, Left my home of 27 years in New York and came down here to New Orleans, two great jazz cities, which is one reason I was the family designee to come down. But yeah, I've been on stage with them starting, in my childhood and then continuing on my own since, my teen years, been on stage my whole life, singing. And I've always been a love missionary. I believe I was born to foster more love in the world. And music has been my main gift and vehicle for that. And now stepping into, I've certified coach and leader with Claire Zamet's work and, trained in business entrepreneurial aspects from lots of people, including my main mentor, Sage Levine. So just been, especially in this caregiving role where I couldn't keep traveling the world and singing, tapping into how can I keep serving from my parents' house from a computer, and the pandemic slowed my role first and then into the caregiving. So that's my primary function right now. But at the same time, I'm keeping that ball rolling with myself as a coach, as a speaker, so that when the caregiving time's done, I'm not starting from scratch. I'm already, ball rolling and ready to get back out on the world stage where I'm looking forward to, making a difference in front of audiences and at events, other people's stages. I'm looking forward to swinging with the heavy hitters, hopefully, get more women of color into the sphere of transformational leadership. And yeah, it's interesting because I've got so many different things that I've studied and done in my life. We all have our PhDs in life. And seeing how they all come together is so much fun, especially as I go into adding more speaking and leadership. Yeah. And then I'm a newlywed. I got married. I decided I was finally ready. It's part of my story, but met a man in January last year, got married in August of last year. So I'm
Oh,
already a year, over a year.
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. This is our little love nest in French Quarter where we fell in love.
Oh my goodness. That's so wonderful. What an inspiration. Like it's never too late. I tell people that it's never, ever, ever too late. Some of us are late bloomers.
Yeah. I wasn't ready. I wasn't
Yeah,
ready.
yeah,
When I
yeah.
decided I met him like 2 or 3 weeks later. I'm like, hi.
That's great. Fantastic. Good manifesting.
That's exciting. Yeah.
Oh,
And I'm singing
wonderful.
2 days a week here in New Orleans too. So in March of this year, I was like, my soul just wants to sing because I had not been focusing on my singing career. And I expressed that twice in the same day vigorously in two different friends' workshops. That right after the second workshop that day, I got a phone call offering me 3 gigs that turned into a regular twice a week during the day when I already had an aide just a couple months before that coming in. So that worked out so beautifully. I've never done an 11 a.m. gig in my life, but that's what I do now.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Absolutely. And for all of you that are listening, Arlee is going to be in the Leadership Summit as well. And so, stay tuned to listening to that conversation as well. And I've asked her to sing. So you have such a beautiful voice. Just your voice and the resonance that comes from your voice is empowering alone. So I imagine you're a very, very good empowerment coach. So
Mm.
let's dive right into the story. You were talking a little bit about it before we started recording, and I thought, wow, that's interesting. And I got truth bumps all over my body where the hair stands on end. I call those truth bumps because that means there's something important that's getting ready to be said, and it holds truth and wisdom for the awakening of consciousness. So, yes, let's just
Mm.
dive right in if you want.
Yay, wonderful. Thank you, Schamet. Thanks again for this invitation. This isn't a prepared story. It's interesting to look at what would be beneficial. And so, being an improvisational being, I don't mind being in an improvisational moment. And a question that I would ask our listeners, for starters and for context, is, do you have any experience with childhood trauma? This is the Wounds to Wisdom, Wisdom to Superpower podcast. And so I imagine maybe a good amount of you have. And I have. I mean, my parents are musicians. I was born in 1960, and our households there was always a lot going on after um, so I was exposed to many things that children are not typically or supposed to be exposed to: the sex, the drugs, and the rock and roll. Only in our case, it was blues and jazz. And I didn't, my stories. It's funny because in college I would just drop these outrageous stories, and I would watch people's jaws drop. And I was like, you can't tell my story, it's mine to tell. And I just made light of everything because I didn't realize I'd been traumatized. When I look at things that happened to me in my teen years, when I looked at things that happened to me, not like I'm a victim, but situations that I, ended up in as a, preteen, as a teenager, as an adult, where I didn't know how to extricate myself. I didn't know how to say no, and not knowing that this was all trauma response type of activities until I was 31. In my 20s, I would say we didn't always know where our next meal was coming from, but we always had love, and we did always had love, and we always had music. I think another line was, "Oh, good thing I don't have an addictive personality because, my only addictions are love and chocolate chip cookies." Well, at a certain point in my life, in my 50s, I found out, hey, there's 12-step programs for those too. So I went on a long healing journey. I feel, I'm a very spiritual being, and I feel like I actually chose my parents. And it's interesting for me to consider, why did I choose, if indeed I did, why did I choose such a little panoply of, or however you say that, of experiences that were traumatizing. And in my 30s and 40s, once I knew that I came from trauma, I wasn't in therapy. I started therapy at 34 after an engagement ended, but mostly in my 40s, I was trying to figure out how to heal myself. Now that we know about neuroplasticity, I was actually re-traumatizing myself over and over again, because what I was doing was I would go back into these memories. I was kidnapped at 5 and almost raped. I was kidnapped at 9 and almost raped. And I was in sexual situations that I shouldn't have been in from 9 on as well. And I would go back into these memories to try to find another layer of forgiveness for the people that, did things to me or that I did things with. Sometimes I even instigated things because I was a traumatized kid. And so I would go back into the situations in detail to try to find that next level of forgiveness. And then at a certain point, I'm like, where are my happy memories? Like, where are my happy memories? Because I spent so much time trying to heal myself that I just kept putting that record on the pain over and over again. And it was interesting. The main thing I want to focus on, especially since I work with women and their creative output, a lot of times we might have a vision of something that we want to do when we're a kid. Like I saw myself on big stages when I was 9. I didn't, I'd never been to a big stadium concert, but I had that vision at 9. So I'm still working my way to Wembley and Carnegie Hall. Thank you very much. Um, but I had that vision at 9. And so my little 9-year-old is my little cheerleader too. She's like, let's go, let's go. But also, but um, a lot of times we have these gifts that we put aside for different reasons, put them aside because we had to do the thing, raise the kids. We had to make the money, get the job. Somebody told us that's stupid, don't do that. It was undervalued in society, as the arts so often are, with all of the cuts in arts programs in the 70s and on, in this country, in the US. Um, and so people are not living authentically because they're missing a part of themselves. They're missing something that brought them joy. Now, I've always been on stage. I've always done that thing that brings me the most joy, which makes me a bit of a unicorn in some ways. I've been traveling all over the world as a professional jazz singer. But one of the interesting things that I noticed along the way, I think this was in my 40s, I noticed that on stage, I could be like, and as a jazz singer, I improvise a lot. There's a lot of just being in the moment with the music. And so I could be fully self-expressed. I could be fully sexual and sensual. And one of the things that I realized is as open as I think I am, that was a safe barrier because nobody could get to me on stage. Nobody could touch me on stage. Nobody could make me feel unsafe when they're out there and I'm in control on stage, separated. So it took me a while to realize that. But what I noticed, what was one of my clues, that there was a disconnect between the self in my body, as we call it, my younger self, and then my woman self, was I'd come off stage in my fancy clothes and maybe some man would express, a little amorous, a little flirtation. And I used to revert to feeling like a child. Like I didn't know how to handle in an adult womanly way amorous attention. And so I knew I knew there was some disconnect going on there in me that I wanted to, figure out because I wanted to be a woman on stage and a woman off stage, and my child self, that little Arlee, she's never going anywhere. She's here. I need to pay attention sometimes more to the tender parts, but that quality, that's a childlike quality that my parents have, that I have. My mother corrected somebody just the other day. She's like, I didn't work for a living. I played for a living. I made music. So we play and it's a gift and it's beautiful. And I knew that there was a disconnect that I didn't like, and so I paid attention to that. And I just, I've been through many different types of trainings in my life, many different types of healing modalities in my life, and more therapy and 12-step rooms for money issues. But I also fit into, other rooms around, my parents weren't alcoholics, but, there were substances, and there's some of those characteristics of the Al-Anon family, that I could relate to. And so I learned about you know, relationship anorexia. I learned about, being avoidant of intimacy, and the way that I one way that I was aware of the story was, I got my heart broken at 17. Anybody ever had a heartbreak? I had my heart broken at 17, and I basically lived my life avoiding heartbreak. So I didn't, get deep in the trenches of learning how to love and be loved as a woman because I was avoiding heartbreak as well. And so that's, another part of the story that I just had a healing on right before I decided I was ready to get married. And we can talk more about that if you want. But what's beautiful now is to feel integrated. I can't say there was an exact turning point, but it was a long process of just paying attention, being willing to look at the wounds is part of how we heal the wounds. And when we're not willing to, when we just go into the addictive behaviors, whether it's shopping or sex or, Instagram or, all the different ways that we can tune away from ourselves, the wounds are still there being triggered and being activated. And so it's really beneficial, whatever modality can work for you, even a deep breath into the body, a single deep breath, letting all the air out even first. And a big breath in. You can do that with me if you want, and then just hold it for a moment and let it out slowly. That can completely change your state, where you can shift from reacting to life to being able to respond. And like the tools that we can have handy, humming is a beautiful tool that we have. You might not think you can sing, but if you can hum, you can change your cellular structure. If you can laugh, you can change your cellular structure. And so, you live, you learn, but I'm grateful that I'm on stage as a woman. I'm off stage as a woman. I'm on stage as a little girl. I'm off stage as a little girl. I have choices. And when you have knowledge, when you have awareness, when you've done the work, you have choice. And that's the beauty of being present to yourself.
I love that you just made that full circle there, where you, at the beginning of the conversation, were talking about how you noticed that you were the woman on stage. And I just love how the universe works. And every time I ask someone to be on my podcast or in my summit, it's something that I also need to learn. And I can relate to what you're saying because I had that exact same experience of being on stage, because I was a performing artist in my early 20s and I was a complete goddess when I was on stage, just like the woman, the superhero, if you will, of my own theatrical expression and performance. And then off the stage, I was a little girl in a lot of ways. And so I love the full circle that you just talked about of now you're, the woman on stage and the woman off stage. But what I really love that you just included was that you're also the little girl on stage and the little girl off stage, because that feels really whole and complete and empowered, because we are both. We have the little girl inside and we have the woman inside, and we can be empowered by being aware of when we're in the energy of each one, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
so,
yeah. And name it, being able to name it.
name it, to
And
be in
and
touch
what,
with it. Yeah.
yeah,
To
yeah,
embrace it. Yeah.
yeah.
That's
And one thing I was
beautiful.
going to say, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I mean, we have so many facets. We have all ages inside us. We're all those ages,
Mhm.
whether we connect with them or not. It's all part of us. Life is not, it kind of looks linear, but it's not. Life is energy, right? Like we were connected, we were drawn to each other energetically. And so if it's so funny, my first year in therapy in my 30s, I didn't even know how to name feelings. I didn't know anything about boundaries. working with this energetically without even having to name something. You can just put your hands on that, place in your body and just be with it. And one of the exercises that we do with the feminine power coaching is putting your hands there. You're probably connecting with a younger part of yourself. So you might ask yourself, like, how old is that part of myself? Like that not inside, like, maybe you might do that. You don't have to. You can just put your hands on it. Just bringing awareness to it sometimes is enough to release some of that locked energy. Because there's a great book I haven't read. I've owned 3 copies. Our Body Keeps the Score. Our body has so much information that we're not consciously, it's our subconscious, right? That we're not consciously aware of. But you put your hands there, and one of the feminine power exercises we call a feeling and needs inventory. And so you might bring your badass adult self online for a moment, once you've realized there's a pain, associated, for instance, like with your mother. You think of your mother, you get the sharp pain in your abdomen. Put your hands there, take a moment to breathe, take a moment to remember what a badass you are, because you've done a lot in your life, no matter what it is. And then with the tenderness of listening, be that parent to a child that you wished you had, or be that parent to a child that you have been, but to yourself, and ask, what are you feeling right now? And you don't have to fix it. You don't have to do anything with it, but just repeat it. Use your name. Arlee, I hear you're feeling sad. And just breathe and ask, what else are you feeling? Wow, Arlee, I notice you're feeling frustrated. Got it. And you might do that 3 times. And then you might ask, what do you need? Because we don't listen to ourselves, especially if we're in the habit of, reaching for something outside of ourselves. What are you needing right now? And we're not trying to fix, we're not trying to justify, we're just asking a simple question. Just bringing awareness to it can help to dissipate old locked energy. And if you know that your inner child needs something from you, maybe you can give that to yourself. Like maybe your little self's like, I need a hug, and I'm like feeling the emotion, even though I'm not like, and so like, oh, I'm feeling it. So I'll just, Arlee, I hear you need a hug. Got it. So you might just, wrap your arms around yourself. Whew, and give yourself that hug. And breathe. And there's transformation, there's alchemical transformation in that connection with ourselves. So that's just one example of ways that I've, been worked on myself.
Yeah, I
And
love it. I love parts work, all the different parts of ourselves. And, that part of me said, I need chicken and dumplings. And so I made chicken and dumplings. And it was a dish that my mom made when I was a little girl that I always loved. And it always brought me comfort. And so, sometimes we do just need that comfort food to kind of
I need
ease our
dance.
soul, chicken soup for the soul, chicken dumplings for the soul. And I made it for my
Mhm.
son and my mother and father-in-law last night for his 17th birthday. And it brings
Aw.
back all those happy memories that ground me from all the positive experiences of my childhood. So it's much more than just the soup. So it
Yeah.
can be, it's the smell and it just brings happiness and contentment to my heart. So, I wanted to add to what you're saying. I did some healing kind of transformational work with Celine Vega. She lives in Santa Cruz, and incredible woman. And she talked about how she's got these different parts and that her inner child is always with her, sitting next to her. And even though she's done all this healing and she's an incredible woman, she's got a PhD and she's a teacher. And, and I thought, wow, this incredible woman with a PhD that is so successful still has her inner child sitting next to her? Because I thought somehow it was once you did your healing work that would, turn into the woman, right? Transform into the woman. But she's saying that she's still there. But she said, but I never let her drive the car. I don't let her be in charge. She gets to
Yeah, yep, yep,
communicate with me, and tell me what she needs, but I'm in
yep,
charge, like the woman's in
yep,
charge. And I thought that was
yep,
a great thing just to kind of add into our conversation about how, yes, we are the woman, the empowered woman, and we are also the empowered child. But the child part, there's a time and place. Like, we don't want them running the show, right?
right. And we can give them gratitude for getting us here, because it's the choices that they made for survival that got us here, that kept us alive. And like we can thank our inner child for that. Thank you so much. Like you went through some hard stuff and you survived. And thank you so much because we're here now. And you know what, baby, I got this. You did the hard thing. Now it's my turn. So I got you. I got this. Put somebody in front of you that you love already. And just imagine you're sending love to them.
Mm.
You're just imagining your heart sending love to them. And then 3 times that. Like imagine you're sending 3 times as much love to them. I just like feel that love. And then imagine 10 times, like just imagine you're expanding your heart, like all the way to the edges of the room and as far as the universe, whatever it takes, like to send that entity, that being, that dog, that nephew, that child, 10 times more love. And then here's the crux. Whoa, bring it back to yourself.
Oh, I love that one.
That's from Dr. Sue Morter. Bring it back to yourself.
Oh, I love that. I've been doing that with my mom actually the last few days, just been feeling that I need to send her lots of love. And
Mm,
I needed to hear that
that-
today, Arlee, that I need to send it back to myself as well.
yay.
I
Yay.
think a lot of people needed to hear that. You know, people that tend to follow me are very heart-centered and givers, empaths, healers. And we always want to give all that love out, but it's so important to remember to bring it back to ourselves so we're not empty. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. As Lisa Nichols says, you can't give from an empty cup. And so, and on the planes, they say put on your oxygen mask first. So we're so, as women, we're socialized to give. We're socialized to be there for others. And that's part of the paradigm shift that needs to happen. you know, one of the paradigm shifts that needs to happen is for women to realize they deserve their own attention, because it's uncomfortable for a lot of women, to generalize, but it's uncomfortable for a lot of women to give attention to themselves because it was not okay. Your back of the room, or what do they tell some children? Children are seen and not heard. Like, don't cry. Even little girls are told, don't be a crybaby. Like don't feel, don't express. And how do we provide value is for making ourselves useful to other people. Like I never got married or had kids, so I was kind of doing my own thing. But I know that that is a huge part of the culture, that women are not being fully self-actualized because they're not paying attention to themselves. And so when we put attention home
Yeah.
and go, what did I really want to be when I grew up? What's really stirring in me? What's whispering in me now that I'm ready to bring to life? Like what's that lost dream, or what's that new dream? Like what's that thing that I undervalued because I felt too old, or who cares, or it's stupid? If you're feeling something, if you've got an urge or an impulse, I invite you to pay attention to it because it matters. It matters. And it deserves your attention. You deserve your attention.
Yeah. I love this conversation so much. I did not know about disassociation until just the last few years with I'm getting a degree in psychology. finally doing that, university degree that I always wanted to do and
You love.
learning so much. But at the same time, because I'm an older woman, it's not just an academic learning for me. I'm going through a whole healing metamorphosis through the whole journey. And I started to put the pieces together that in a lot of ways, being on stage and performing was me disassociating. And
Mhm.
I mean, I didn't know that until recently, actually. So I'm loving this conversation of, and I can catch myself going into that performance mode because the performance mode is easier. It's almost like you become an actress and then you get almost like disconnected from your authentic self. But the authentic self, for those of us that have been traumatized or had, that hard childhood, is painful and it hurts and it's scary. And so
Yeah.
stepping into this almost like alternative self, the superhero, is so much safer and so much easier than actually having to be vulnerable,
Present. Mhm.
present. And so, I'm witnessing myself of when I do it, and doing like these podcasts and things too. I can also go right into that performance mode so that it's like I have this witness watching. So my question for
Yeah.
you is, how were you able to connect it all to where you were not in a disassociation from being the performer in performance mode? Because you said you brought the child to the stage. That's what really
That's
got
the
piqued
child
my
was always
interest. I was
there.
like, oh,
Ah,
wait, what?
no,
How'd
the
you do
child
that?
was always there. The child was always there because I was on stage since I was a child. So that's the playful
Wow.
part of me. That's the dancing part of me. That part was always there, was getting the woman off stage, even if I'm in my sexy gown. But no, I just thought of another piece of my story that relates to your question. When you were sharing just now about disassociation and being on stage as, as an avoidant behavior kind of.
Yeah, an
Um,
escape.
it was
Yep.
interesting. Yeah, it was interesting for me because when I did Landmark, that's when I did the forum like at 31, and that's when I realized, oh, I kind of had an abusive childhood, and oh, I think I was born to perform, but I became even more of the performer and entertainer, I think, because it was safer. Like my younger sister, 2 years younger than me, she was nicknamed the cuddle bug because she would climb into laps. She wasn't kidnapped and almost raped at 5. I was. She wasn't sent away at 2 for a few months after a baby was born. I was, because my mother had my sister in the car and I got sent off with relatives. And so I don't know for sure, but I'm imagining that was a first trauma or an early trauma where it's like, ooh, I've been replaced, like, well, how can I like be irreplaceable? I can be entertaining. I can be fun. I can be. And in college, I noticed like I didn't have any concept of how to have a one-on-one conversation. I knew how to be entertaining. I knew how to tell stories. I would download crazy stuff. And then there'd be this awkward moment where people would be like, whoa. And then they wouldn't reciprocate. They wouldn't all of a sudden start telling all their crazy stuff. Like I didn't know how to ask questions. I didn't know, I didn't even understand the concept of listening until I did Landmark at 31. I'm like, oh, listening. Because I would be like, I know a lot of people a little bit. Like I would just feel people. I would love people. People would feel me. People would love me. But I would have like very little idea of what was actually going on in their lives. We would just be in spaces together, moving through life in a way that was lovely, but it wasn't knowing them. It was knowing them spiritually, but not knowing their life, like what's going on with you, because I didn't know how to ask that question. My sister, I felt like I knew a lot of people a little bit, and she knew a few people well, because she was the listener who would ask the question. She was not the revealer. I was the revealer. One of the things that helped me to go back to your question, one was just awareness, realizing I don't know how to listen, and I became an entertainer partly because it was safe, even at like 9. Um, but going into my coaching and leadership and facilitation training at 59 with Claire, that was another, and seminary at 51 was another level of learning to be present, and learning how to drop in, and then with Claire, more skills on that, learning how to have hold different kinds of attention, how to pay attention. Not only women are so drawn to like just like, oh well, just tell me more. Like, how can I help you? How can I help? How can I help? What do you need? What do you need? What do you need? People like, but how to be in a space where you can have attention over there. I can have attention here. I can have attention to the field, learning how to take those breaths, learning how to be present, learning how to slow down, like it is my natural state. I have a lot of energy.
You do. You
And
have
it
an
used
amazing amount of energy. I really like that about you. And I just want to pull out, I know I've just interrupted, but I just want to pull out a
okay.
thread right now because what I love the most about your story, well, all of it, but is that you went from the wounds to the wisdom, but then you pulled out the superpowers of, everything that's happened to you has made you exactly who you are. And that it is a superpower of what you've cultivated from the whole experience. And by being that observer and witnessing and watching and learning, and then getting the tools and implementing them means that now you can help other women that are also performers and can identify. I know your niche is older women and over 50, but I actually see you working with performers because I think there's probably a lot of us out there that right have stepped onto the stage because we know how to do that. We know how to do that, but then bringing in the presence and all those different parts and channeling that. Wow. Can you imagine? Like that would just bring out even more and more superpowers in,
Mm.
people that are on the stage, because it is my feeling and my belief that singers like yourself, comedians, anyone that's on the stage they have so much power of influence to change this world for the better. And if you can empower, I'm getting like an aha moment here, light bulbs going off. If you could start
I'm loving it.
empowering
I'm loving
more
it.
performers to deepen into their authenticity and their vulnerability to bring that out. Wow. Wow. Incredible.
Beautiful.
And that's what I'm getting from this conversation is
Mm.
there's, those of us that are drawn. I know that I was drawn to the stage at a very early age. I just love it. I didn't know what it was. Like my mom would say, "Oh, you're just an exhibitionist," but I'm like, well, no, it's more than that. It's that I know I've come here to change the world for the better. And the first step is being aware and awakening people and educating, which is what you've done and which is what I've done. It's been our path of our unfoldment. I love that you also brought into the conversation right at the beginning that even though things were a bit tumultuous, you know that you did bring in your family for a reason. I completely 100% aligned to that as well. I know I did as well. And it's so, we can learn and cultivate these wounds to our wisdom and then to our superpowers. And yeah, just to tie that all together, wow, what an incredible story. I'm so glad that I asked you to come on today.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so much fun. And I love that reflection that you just gave me. Everybody basically always tells me some variation on work with musicians, work with performers. And I have resisted it up until now, but coming from this conversation and all of the things that I shared and just seeing, the different wisdom that I have in me to drop through in a being present moment like this, the different, I'm a font of teachers. And so that's part of my superpower is being a font of, because I'm a lifelong learner and I'm always taking in information. There's like the right thing will bubble up to share at the right moment, and so that, by being present. And so this conversation, I can receive that suggestion, like, actually, yeah, that's actually maybe a really good suggestion. So thank you for saying that. and not just performers, but speakers too, people that
Speakers,
are on.
performers, actors, actresses, comedians. Because if you think about it, there are so many actors, actresses, comedians, performers that actually off stage are battling with depression. They're, actually having a really difficult time in their life off stage. So,
Yeah.
yeah, what you're doing, just the nature of who you are and the transformational journey that you've been on, you can help others with that, bringing that together. So it's not separate. And I think
Mm.
that, to me is where I'm feeling the thread right there is how you said, I mean, you could even write a book about that, about the woman on stage and the child on stage and how she was always there. It's just now that you're aware of it and you're acknowledging her. I mean, that's the first step. And, I've been with my husband for 26 years now, met in 1998, and love of my life. And he's so funny because he says, oh, sometimes I'm dealing with the empowered woman, and other times I'm dealing with your 13-year-old stroppy self or your 16-year-old teenager. And I'm like, yeah, that'd be about right.
Yeah.
So we've
Yeah.
got
And bringing that
languaging
awareness.
around
Love
it.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's a blessing that you have somebody that is that aware as well, and that can, because sometimes you might not be aware of it, and then he can point it out to you. Like you have the ability to bring awareness to it, but he might have seen it before you did, and you're like, oh, honey, thank you. I love that, partnership.
He did see it before I did. And at first I didn't know how to feel about it. But what he brought to it was so beautiful. He actually said, I love the woman that you are, the empowered woman. And I also love all the different versions of the little girl, because he knows I've had a hard time, and that he could hold that space for me. Oh, I'm going to get emotional. That he can hold that space for me and love all those different versions of me, because we all have all these different parts, especially if we've been quite fractured in our upbringing. And for
Yeah.
him to mirror that back and love me, regardless of all the different wounded parts I have, brought so much healing. It really was very healing and transforming. And I feel like those little girl parts have kind of grown up a bit as a result.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. That's the right kind of partnership to be in, where you can be all of yourself and you can have that level of vulnerability where you're maybe initially like, I don't want you to see that or know that about me. And then you're like, but actually, thank you for pointing that out. So we can both kind of honor what's present, you know? And you reminded me with that too. I was in a sales situation recently where I was debating over a high ticket program with one of my mentors to go back into a high ticket program for the first time in a couple of years. And I had more than one sales call with my, sales coach. And it was interesting because now that I do have that awareness, I was like, oops, my little scared little girl is here right now, and breathe. Just being present to that. And then it was interesting because when I had a final call, Sage Levine wanted to get on with me and personally, thank me for singing for her 3-day event that she had invited me to sing for. And and my adult self was present the whole time, and I mentioned that my child self had shown up in an earlier conversation, and she reminded me that's, really great that you can see that. And yeah, that's partly from, doing the work, right? Doing the work. You
Yeah.
can pay attention. When you can pay attention to yourself, woo, 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 you can do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you can't heal what you don't feel,
Yeah.
if
Gotta
you
feel it
don't
to
if
heal
you
it.
don't know what it is, so you don't have anything to work with. But if you know what it
Yeah.
is and you can see it and you can feel it, then you go, ah, okay. Hmm,
Yeah.
I can do this with
And it's
love and compassion.
yeah, yeah. And it was such a good point too that you made with the comedians and actors and stuff, people off stage battling with depression. I mean, certainly I think a lot of people to generalize, perhaps become comedians because they were protecting themselves from some sort of abuse, perhaps, or just like some people maybe become entertainers, check, to, as a way of protecting themselves. So that's just, I appreciate your naming that, as a possible way for me to serve, within what I already was envisioning, which was helping women bring their creative dreams to life. But how to do that even more fully from that integrated place, and again, I'm not a therapist, so I wouldn't be doing therapy, and that's always like kind of a fine line because I am a minister, and so I work intuitively, and so, but it's fun as a minister. I have more license to go deep, you know, which is cool.
Yeah, well, I'm getting a big intuitive hit for you with that, because I am an oracle and psychic. So I'm like, I see a niche here for you for sure, and isn't that interesting that you're like, oh, because other people have suggested it. You're like, oh, I don't know. But, there's something there that you can really bridge because you've walked it, you've lived it, you've done it, you're the lighthouse and the beacon for that transformational pathway. So, you know,
Yeah,
yeah, it's exciting. Yeah, the
yeah.
whole wounds to wisdom to superpowers story. That was just beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. And yeah,
Yeah.
I did have one of my coaches more recently was a singer, and she'd had a dream that she hadn't shared. And then by the time we were done working together, she was singing and performing. And I've envisioned the possibilities of being a performance coach, like for stagecraft, but I hadn't brought it to this level of that underlying, work that we could shift, as well. So I do appreciate your oracleness. Thank you, my sister. And
You're welcome. I've worked with clients that, they did have a voice, but it was just blocked from the wounds, from, the fears, from the trauma. And then after working with them, they, release that and boom, they're these incredible beings that actually have so many gifts to bring to the world. And so, yeah, I definitely see that as one of your superpowers. Yeah,
yeah, to be continued. Yeah, because that's
I
that's
know.
that's it. Those voices blocked. We want to unblock women's voices. We want to unleash women's power in the world. And I just thank you again for inviting me to participate with you on this Wounds to Wisdom to Superpower podcast. And know that you're out there doing great work. And thank you for
Um,
this opportunity to bring my story, new light into my own story.
You're welcome. Is there any last and final words of wisdom that you'd like to share with all our listeners, or maybe a song that you'd like to sing?
I could do a song. But yeah, you know what? With the marriage story, one of the things is to be willing to open your heart. When we're wounded, a lot of times we close our hearts. We don't want to get hurt again. But I always used to tell my audiences, if you're willing to be hurt, even before I knew it for myself at a deeper level, it's like we got to keep opening our hearts. To those people that drive us crazy, to those neighbors that we don't really like, to boss that kind of irks our last nerve. Can you love even those with a spiritual love? Like, you don't have to forgive their bad behavior. You don't have to condone their bad behavior, but can you still open your heart to them as an entity? But for relationships, when I realized fall of 2022 that I was surviving an unexpected heartache, and remembered that I'd already survived heartache at 17. I'd avoided it my whole life. So realizing, oh yeah, I actually survived that, and I'm actually surviving and thriving with this one. I'm free. I'm free. I'm ready to get married. I'm free. So I decided, I was, after processing my fall heartbreak, which woke up my muse, I wrote 70 lyrics in my heartbreak. Like, the next side benefit of being heartbroken was the writer coming back online.
There's the
It's like,
wounds to wisdom to superpower story again, right? That's a country and Western music was founded on that.
And it's like, oh, I'm free because I don't, if I get my heart broken again, I know I can survive it again because I'm a badass and I've done it twice now. What? Um, and so I'm ready to get married. And I met my husband like 2 or 3 weeks later. So, when you process and you're being with, you can face anything, because you've already survived so much. You, we've already survived so much. We are more than we know. We are, and women especially, we tend to, this is a word of wisdom for the parting. We tend to underestimate what we can do, what we're capable of, what's possible for us. We tend to shrink. And it's not saying we're bad or wrong, but it's just saying maybe lift up the curtain a little bit and realize you're more than you know. You're capable of more than you realize. Get the right support in the right community. What skills, what's the gap between where you want to be and where you are? What do you need to learn? What kind of resourcing do you need? Like, start there and just baby steps. You don't have to take the whole mountain at once, but just start moving in the direction of your dreams and you will get there if you don't stop. So,
I love that. I love. All right. Well, do you want to share a song with us? Because I would love that.
oh, sure, sure. This is one that I wrote for Claire's for the Feminine Power 10-day retreat that we did before the pandemic started back in 2019. And I knew I wanted to sing for the event, not just a talent show, but I didn't actually make that, I made that declaration, but I didn't actually make that request ahead of time. Um, and I wrote this song at the event, like by the Coke machine at 11 o'clock at night, and sang it for the talent show. And then they actually invited me, Clara and her team invited me to reprise the song for the invocation for our gala dinner on the last day. So I did get to sing for the event officially, not just the talent show, which was very fun. Um, and one of the things, you might have an audience from all over the world. So if you think about the words, rise, woman, rise, wipe the doubt from your eyes. Rise, woman, rise. You were born to be a queen. Not everybody will resonate with queen, but that's okay. And so when I reprised it, they wanted it in different languages, and I had 4 women on stage, and so they did it each, they said it each in a different language, and I invited everybody at the same time to say it. So I invite you to say that in your language, whatever it may be. And then if you want to sing along to me from wherever you are, this is just the chorus, Rise, Woman, Rise. Rise, woman, rise. Wipe the doubt from your eyes. Everybody sing, rise, woman, rise. You were born to be a queen. Everybody sing, rise. Woman, rise. Wipe the doubt from your eyes. Rise, woman, rise. You were born to be a queen. One more time now. Rise, woman, rise. Sing this one to yourself. Wipe the doubt from your eyes. Rise, woman, rise. You were born to be a queen. Yes, you were. Yes, you were.
That's so beautiful. I love that. Thank you. My business name used to be Goddess Rising. I made essential oils. I wonder if I have one right here. Oh, I do. Look, this one's Forgive. Goddess Rising
Oh,
Apothecary.
I just got a scent, a sweet scent just popped in. Whoa.
This is the song I actually heard you singing. This is
Oh,
the
okay.
one that drew me to you. So isn't it amazing
Oh,
that that's the one you intuitively knew to sing?
yay. Beautiful, beautiful. And I'm just amazed that as soon as you held that up, I got a whiff of something sweet. Like, what? And it's amazing.
Oh, you have one of those clairvoyant abilities where you can smell things. I've got that too.
I have a very sensitive nose and sensitive hearing. I'm like, what? That was just so fun and just a surprise. It's like,
Oh,
whoa.
oh,
But thank you, Schamet. Thank you
oh, you're
for
welcome.
me.
Thank you.
I don't know, maybe longer than you meant to go, but we had a good time. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.